We're going to be discussing a rumor storm around the NBA, including Jamahl Mosley's name popping up as one of the Pelicans' target for their head coaching position. He's currently the head coach of the Orlando Magic. Jaden Ivey's almost back and making a return to the Pistons. The Pistons team is already number one team in the East, and Zach LaVine's trade value is hitting an all-time low yet again. We're going to talk about all those things and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. And the Orlando Magic have had a uneven start to the season. The Magic right now sit at basically 500, which they've drastically improved with that time. But what we've heard over that time period since the Magic season has started is that maybe Jamahl Mosley and Paolo Banchero, the Orlando Magic's franchise player, aren't necessarily seeing eye to eye. Well, Jake Fisher of the Stein line reported that Mosley is a coach the Pelicans would have interest in pursuing as a replacement for Willie Green, who we know was fired after a 2-10 start by the team. Fisher went on to say this: another coaching name I've heard that will interest the Pelicans is not currently available to them, Orlando's Jamahl Mosley. Now, this is just a speculation, right? But, as we saw, like the Knicks, who put in a request to interview a number of head coaches that already had positions locked in, right? And Willie Green wasn't necessarily on the best footing with that coach, with that franchise anyway. So now, would Jamahl Mosley leave a situation like the Orlando Magic to go to the Pelicans, a situation that we just don't know what that's going to look like? I personally highly doubt that, right? But weirder things have happened before, and maybe we can see something work out to where if the Pelicans really do want to pursue Jamahl Mosley, that they can get that done. Mosley would have to be willing to leave the Orlando Magic for that to happen, and I kind of have my doubts about that. Like I know the rumors with him and Paolo not seeing eye to eye, all those things exist, and usually where there's smoke, there's some fire to things like that. But I'm one of the people that think, when you're losing at a high level, especially with the expectations you had coming into the season, things do get a little bit more tense. Now, I know the Jamahl Mosley, Paolo Banchero things date back towards the end of last season, so there is some carryover from that to where it's not just based off this season. But when you really look at the last two seasons, well, last season and then at the start of this season, it's really been kind of disappointing for the Magic between injuries then, slow start now, Desmond Bane not necessarily living up to the acquisition and the draft picks that they gave up for Desmond Bane. But he did end up also say this. To be clear, though, Mosley's Magic have rebounded well from a 1-4 start. Orlando won 5 of its next 7 before a tough overtime loss Sunday to the Houston Rockets. So, this is just something to monitor and see how it ends up shaking out. More than likely, nothing's going to come of it, but it is interesting to watch to see if anything does happen there because, again, as I like to say, weirder things have happened around the NBA, and they probably will continue. From that, let's jump into the next topic. Jaden Ivey has made a big step forward in his return potentially for the Detroit Pistons. According to Clutch Point's Brett Siegel, the Pistons expect him back in a full practice soon. The Pistons have assigned him to the G League rehab work, marking real progress in his timeline after weeks of waiting. The shift signals that Jaden Ivey's injury recovery is nearing the final phase, and fans can finally envision a true return. And this is kind of the last step that we've seen, right? Assigning a player down to the G League is not like a demotion or anything like that. It really gives them some time and opportunity to get a couple of practices in, if it even lasts a couple of practices. A lot of times it's like one, and then they get called back up. So, the Pistons, who are 12-2 on the season, the number one team in the Eastern Conference right now, look like a legit threat, have won games with Cade Cunningham and other starters being out. What this team has been able to accomplish this season, when you look at how everything has gone for them, this does have the makings of a very, very, very special season for the Detroit Pistons. Jaden Ivey can provide a lot of what this Pistons team need. Now, make no mistake about it, Dennis Jenkins, in his 9 games, he started 3. He's had a great run for this Detroit Pistons team, but he's not Jaden Ivey. Now, I have seen some fan reactions on social media in regards to trading Jaden Ivey, especially with his pending restricted free agency, and maybe they will look to do something like that. But getting Jaden Ivey back on the basketball court is going to help this Pistons team win more games and just be deeper. You have somebody in Jaden Ivey that can score kind of outside the framework of the offense, which I think most really good teams need somebody that can do that. I think that's a great sign for him. You look at last year, was a career high for him, 17 points per game, 4 rebounds, 4 assists on 46% shooting from the field and 40% shooting from 3. There's not a single team in the NBA that cannot take that type of production and scoring from a player like Jaden Ivey. And he's also averaged almost a steal per game as well. Getting Jaden Ivey back out there on the basketball court for this team, which he already knows how he fits in with these guys, can do nothing but help this Detroit Pistons team. And this is a team that I tell you what, I know that their schedule hasn't necessarily been the toughest, but when you look at how many players they've been missing on top of all of that, I think that this is a legit run by this Detroit Pistons team. I don't want to leave in the caveat that, of course, things can go left, things can change as the season goes on, but they are playing so good. They have a point differential of plus 7.6. And if you guys are new to kind of following me and my thought, point differential is usually something that ends up shaking out. If you can maintain a really good point differential, that's usually, especially in the Eastern Conference, when you go and filter at the end of every season by point differential, it usually is pretty accurate in regards to the seeding and how that works out in the East. Right now, the Detroit Pistons have the second best point differential in the entire Eastern Conference. Second to them is the New York Knicks, right, who sit at 8-5 on the season. They've had some run there themselves as well. This Pistons team is on a 10-game winning streak as things stand now. And I think the sky's still the limit when it comes to this Detroit Pistons team. And again, as a Bulls fan, I hate to say that, but as an objective basketball viewer, this is a Pistons team that is really, really good. And I think this is going to be, like I said at the beginning, it has the makings of a very special season for the Detroit Pistons. Let's just see where it's going to shake out. And getting Jaden Ivey back can do nothing but help strengthen that run that they could potentially go on this season. But let me know down below what you guys think in regards to Jaden Ivey returning to the Pistons. Do you think he's going to return back and help them? Do you think that Dennis Jenkins maybe is taking his spot? Like, if you're one of those guys, how do you view Jaden Ivey and his potential return to the Detroit Pistons? Let's move on. Zach LaVine finds himself in yet another situation where he reportedly has no trade value. And a big reason of that being his $48 million contract, an option that he has that he's all but assuredly to pick up next season because he's not going to get that money out there on the open market. Zach continues to be a player that can score, right? He's a 3-level scorer that can do it efficiently as well. He's never really been in the best situations, but he also makes mistakes down the stretches of games that's on him, not just on his situation. And teams around the league have reportedly over the years viewed him as a player that is an empty stats guy, isn't a winning player. They doubt his ability, his focus on winning and how much he contributes to that. And what we've seen also around the NBA is that expiring deals don't necessarily have as much attractiveness around the league as they had even a few years ago. And so LaVine picking up that $48.9 million player option could be big. Now, the question that comes down to this, and a trick up the Sacramento Kings sleeve, is that could they go ahead and look to extend him, which he is extension eligible, and he would have to guarantee and go ahead and pick up that option, but then he could be extension eligible, which he's not going to get that type of money. So what the Kings could do is get him an extension, and at that point, his future money is better. Right now, yeah, you still have to pay that $48 million, but could that make him more attractive to a team? That we don't know, right? But the Kings sit in this place where the player that has the most value for them is the one that they don't want to trade, and that's Domantas Sabonis. But DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, these players just don't have the value. Keegan Murray probably has some value as well, but that's another guy that they're hoping is going to be around on whatever the next version of the team is. This Kings situation is messy, and it's actually one of the worst situations in basketball because of, just everything going on with them, their picks, all that type of stuff. Now, luckily, they do own their own first-round pick in 2026. This is a very deep draft, and if the season goes the way that it keeps going, that means they're going to have a very high pick in a draft that's supposed to be really deep. Now, after that, that's where things start getting a little bit shaky for them, right? They have their own first-round picks in 28, 29, 31. Actually, I'm wrong on that. They actually have all their own first-round picks. So the Kings are in a situation where they probably are contemplating going a semi-rebuild, and that means trading, players that have value but trying to hold on to Sabonis and some other young players. But again, is that really is that possible? Is that feasible? Are they going to have to eventually? Is Sabonis going to ask for a trade, which is sure something that I'm sure that they are terrified of, right? So that's what things are going to have to go to with here. And if the Kings are hoping to move Zach LaVine, as a Bulls fan that has been there before with my franchise, that's going to be very difficult, my boy. It's going to be very difficult. So we'll see what happens with that. But the Kings, they have some decisions to make on the roster with Zach LaVine and others. And I guess we'll figure out where that's going to lead them going into next year. With that said, from another one, we also had Jake Fisher also talk about Lauri Markkanen situation, saying this: The Utah Jazz continue to treat Markkanen as the core of their long-term plan, even as Markkanen trade conversations keep returning each time a contender to calls. However, the Jazz stance haven't wavered. They're listening, but they're not engaging. And, if the front office ever chooses to move the All-Star, it won't be a slow build or a public sweepstakes. It will be sudden and a deal that appears without warning. So, Lauri Markkanen's been, the Golden State Warriors were heavily pursuing Lauri Markkanen in the trade market. It didn't happen, right? They ended up trading for Jimmy Butler. And so, while people did believe that maybe Danny Ainge could look to move a player like Markkanen, it seems like they are sending the clear message that Lauri is not available on the trade market right now. Now, the question is that the right move for this Utah Jazz team? And this is a Jazz team that it depends on how you look at it and how you view their young pieces, right? They're sitting at 10th right now. They're 5-8 on the season. Still a very young season. We don't know how things are going to go for them there, but they're 5-8 on the season. But you look at them having Ace Bailey. Keontae George is a player that's come on really well for them. Isaiah Collier is another player that has a bright future that you think there as well. And so, you have those questions to ask yourself. And we know that they also have to make a contract decision on Walker Kessler at the end of the season, whether to extend him, move him, whatever that may bring for that franchise. But Lauri is a player that I'll say this about, right? I personally have, and this is my personal opinion, Lauri seems like a player that is always going to put up big numbers on losing teams. Now, that can change. The Utah Jazz have basically been tanking since they got him, so there's that part of it, and maybe that's just my skew. But for what it's worth, he is 6th in the NBA in scoring, averaging over 30 points per game on 48% shooting, basically, with 6 rebounds and 2 assists. There's no doubt that Lauri Markkanen can score the goddamn basketball. The question becomes, how much can he do of that on a winning team? And, that's what teams around the league are going to have to question, as well as injury concerns. He's played over 60 games only 3 times in his NBA career. That's it. Only 3 times in his NBA career has he played over 60 games. He's been in the league for 8 years. So you have to ask yourself that also, right? And that's another question when it comes to Lauri. But apparently he's not turning teams away from calling on Lauri. Right now it's the Utah Jazz that have been turning down those calls. So what is the future for Lauri Markkanen in Utah? I don't know, but maybe you guys do. You guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. But with that said, that's going to wrap up today's episode of NBA Central. These stories are just getting started as we're still in the very early part of the season. Mosley rumors heating up. Ivey's coming back. Zach LaVine has no trade value. You just never know what's going to happen around the NBA. That's what makes it all interesting. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Subscribe as well. Hit that notification bell if you want to know every time we post an episode. But we'll see. I want to hear from you guys down below as well. Which storyline do you think could be the biggest game changer as this season goes on? But this is NBA Central. Stay locked in. And I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making a video, probably tomorrow, right? Follow us at NBA Central Pod. Send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We're the #1 spot for everything basketball related. So stay locked in, stay hooped up, and I'll catch you guys the next time I feel like making a video, probably tomorrow. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.